It's summer 2005, and the word on the street is that there's a Boston woman, a Catholic woman, and she's going to be ordained. And the church is not hearing this, okay? In fact, they send out their own word on the street, which is that if any Catholic is caught there, they will be excommunicated. So the ordination itself takes place in international waters, and is actually officiated by a bishop whose name is still a secret. So that should give you a sense of how transgressive this act is. So come November of that year, Reverend Jean, and her priest husband, who was ordained in the 60s, they decide to have a celebratory Catholic liturgy. And I'm in divinity school at this moment, and I am not missing this. So it's at a UCC church in Newton Center, and I get there, and I walk through the door, and like a lot of churches, it's just a sea of women. And there are men, but like there's a lot of women. And these are women who were living at the intersection of the women's lib movement and feminism and the post-Vatican II, like throwing the doors of the church open. And so these were the women who had chained themselves to churches in Boston in the 70s and then had been dissed by the church in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And these were women, many of whom had vowed to never step foot in a Catholic liturgy ever again. Unless, of course, it was being presided over by a woman. So the service begins, and I am not one for liturgical dance. It's like a lot of this. But this woman comes at the head of the procession, and she's wearing this carnal red dress, and it is like tight in all the places you want it to be, and it is. She starts dancing down the aisles, and it is like easily the sexiest thing I've seen in a long time, and it's even more so because it's in church. So she goes down the aisle, and then it's the acolytes and the lectors and the Eucharistic ministers, and then it's the co-presiders, the husband and wife Catholic pastoral team. And the service is just absolutely gorgeous. Every part of it just kind of breathes this air of light and life into this congregation, and the congregation is full of people who've been like really hurt, and so there's a lot of this healing and renewal, and it's just kind of tangible, it's like it's in the ether of the sanctuary. And then communion comes, and communion is the best, because it's when we reenact the whole Last Supper thing, except in this production of the Last Supper, there's a woman being cast in the role of Jesus. And so what this means is that when I am waiting in line for communion, I'm actually waiting to taste a whole different kind of body of Christ. And it's like none of this consubstantia whatever, this is transubstantiation, so like it is sweet. And so I get to the front of the line and have my hands out, and none of this like Necco wafery looking Jesus, like this is Jesus, this is bread that's obviously been baked by someone in the congregation. And so I go up and I have my hands out, and it's put in my hands, and it just crumbles. And this means that like I get to do one of my favorite things ever, which is not just take the Eucharist and place it on my tongue, but I get to devour it. I get to bring my hands up to my face and just get every last crumb, and it's delicious. It is like impossibly delicious. It is nutty, and it is sweet, and it's got this texture that just makes me want more immediately. And then a couple days pass, and I'm back at div school, and I'm walking through the hallways, and there's a woman who works there who I've never actually spoken with, but we're now friends, but at this time this was our first conversation, and she had seen me at the service, and so she asked me about it. And I just immediately start gushing about, well, first we talk about the red dress, and then we talk about just how delicious the communion was. And I tell her about how like it left me with a fullness, but like I was so far from sated, and like it was so intense, and it changed me. And she listens patiently, as any good clergywoman would, and then she says one sentence, and like all of my vocational anxiety dissipates immediately. And she leans in her beautiful Southern accent, she says, "Girl, I think your calling in life is to go forth and to truly taste the Eucharist."